we know how to draw a box plot. We know how to find a 5-number summary, and we know how to look at a box plot and figure out what that 5-number summary is just looking at the box plot, because, you know, it tells us our minimum, our first quartile, our median, our third quartile, and our maximum. So we can find all that information from a box plot. But guess what? We can find more information from a box plot, which is actually really cool. So the first thing I want you to recognize is that from a box plot, we actually have cut our data into 4 groups, which is, remember what I talked to you about. Here's our minimum, quartile 1, median, quartile 3, maximum. In between here is our first group, second group, third group, and fourth group. So we actually split it into 4 groups of data. And since we split this, you know, the median is the middle of our data, right? So half of the data is below the median, and half of the data is above the median. And then we split the data again in half and put quartile 1 in the middle. That means half of half, or 1/4 of the data is here, and half of half, or 1/4 of the data is in this area. That would also mean 25%, or 1/4 of our data is in between this, and 25% of our data is in here. So if I said, you know, if we had a number here, if this number was 15, and that's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And I said, how much of our data is in between 15 and 22? You could see that 25% and another 25% is in between. In fact, it's half of our data exists inside of this box. So half of our data is in between 15 and 22. If I said how much of our data is below 22, you would be able to say, oh, well, that would be all of this stuff. So that's 25% of the data. All of this, which is another 25%, so 50% of the data. And then all of this data is also below 22. So 75% of the data is below 22. The other thing that we can find from a box plot, which is actually really easy, is this thing called range. And it's not something we've talked a ton about, but basically the idea of range in statistics, which is different than the idea of range in you know, coordinate planes and things like that. Range is just how far it is from the highest number to the lowest number, or from the lowest number to the highest number. So how far apart are they on the number line? That's our range. It just tells us, you know, the spread. You know, so like the range of test scores goes from a 32 to a 100. You know who you are, the 100. Okay, just kidding. So our range is the minimum all the way to the maximum, and to find that, we just take the highest number and we subtract the lowest number. That tells us our range. So if we wanted to find the range of this box plot here, it's hard to read, but that's 86 and that's 54. So what is the range? Well, the range goes from 86 or from 54 to 86, and remember, on a number line, when you find the distance between two numbers, you subtract the top minus the bottom, because, you know, you could count 2, 4, well, why would you want to, right? So to find the range, we just take 86 minus 54, and we get that the range is 32. So that means so say these are test scores, right? There's 32 points in between the top test score and the bottom test score. That's what range tells us. So same with this one. Hopefully these are not test scores, because that would be a bad test. But the range on this one, let's figure out. Well, the top number is 38 and the bottom number is 6. So how far is it from 6 to 38? Remember, to find the distance on a number line, we should just subtract. So we say 38. Ooh, that's really fat. I just fat shamed my pen, but it is fat, okay? 38 minus 6 is 32. So the range for this one is also 32, which is interesting because these box plots aren't really that similar, right? They happen to have the same range, but it's interesting that they look so different. But basically what we're saying is from this minimum to this maximum is 32, and from this minimum to this maximum is also 32.